So I made some progress on my 1983 Honda CM450E Scrambler project, but I have pod filters since I was missing the original airbox, and without any modifications to the carburetors or the pods themselves, it did not run well. So here's what I did. So just a quick overview of what I did. First thing is I modified the pod a little bit to restrict the flow and create a little bit of more laminar flow, I guess, or a venturi. And then I added a little bit of an intake tube. That can make a big difference in how they run. And then I changed my jet by drilling it out from a 120 to a 140, and I added a washer under the needle. And with these CV carbs, you know, I find these changes to the pod and the intake runner are really important. With mechanical slide carburetor, where this moves up and down with the throttle cable, usually all you need to do is change your jet or maybe your needle settings. But with a CV carb, where these vacuum slides go up and down on their own, the flow here has to be kind of very specific. Think of the difference, when I think of restricting the flow, the difference between breathing in with your mouth open versus sucking air in through a straw. There's quite a big difference in how the air flows and that pressure that's there. So that's why sometimes you need to restrict the flow a bit. So here I am removing the carbs. They're VB22s, I think the K single main jet version. I'm going to cover how I modified the pods, adding intake runners, and then changes the needle and jetting. So here's an example of how I modified one of the pods I run on my Suzuki GR650, which is also a CV carb. So you can see in the middle that I've blocked off a lot of the surface area, that only really the end of this pod would be able to suck in air. And I've kind of achieved that by just taking a piece of, I think, 1.5 inch PVC pipe, cutting that slit in it so that I could kind of fold it in on itself to get it inside the pod, and then of course it just pops back out like this. It won't come out easily. And that kind of has the dual purpose of restricting the airflow and creating kind of a wind tunnel, so to speak, to regulate the airflow. On this bike, I put the pod filters and then the original intake runner tube that went from the airbox in between the carb, as well as modifying the pod itself. So we've got our carbs out. Look at putting in some other jets for these pod filters, which I'll admit are a pain, but I didn't have an original airbox, so kind of my only option. So we'll make them work. I don't really have the fancy tools to truly dial them in, but I can tell they're running lean. So use a richer jet. Well, even from the factory, these kind of did well with a richer jet, from what I understand. So here I'm just removing the 2 drain screws on the bottom of the float bowls to empty out the fuel that's still in the bowls of the carbs. And then from there I'll remove the float bowls, just 3 screws on each one. They come off pretty easy. So we've removed our carb bowls, just 3 screws on each one. And then we remove the main jets out of here with a flat screwdriver. Although you may need to hold those steady with a little 7mm wrench. So the stock K hinge jets are 120s. You can see that there. And I've got a rebuild kit over here. Since I'm gonna be cheap and expedient and just drill my own, I'd rather keep the originals as is, just in case, and drill these cheaper aftermarket ones. So we'll see how that goes. So yeah, I removed the jet. I stuck it in my vise here. Kind of loosely put it in sideways and then rotate it and then get it tight so I can drill into it. Then I bought these drill bits off of Amazon, micro drill bits. And then what you can do is go on Google and just look up drill bit jet size chart, and it'll tell you like what size drill bit is equivalent to what size jet. With these, it's pretty simple, the Kahin ones, because 1.4 drill bit, 1.4 millimeter drill bit equals 140 jet. So I used the 1.4. I drilled it out and put it back. Seemed to work fine. What is this, by the way, just out of curiosity? It's too ugly to read. And that's not all I did, though. The other thing I did was put a washer under the needle. So to do that, you remove the top. I took a couple of screws out already. So there's your top. And then, that CV slide is usually will just come right out, but not this one because it's in rough shape. So let me get something. So because that's just an old junk carb that I'm using for parts, I wasn't too worried about being gentle with it. I just wanted to get it open for demonstration purposes, but I wouldn't recommend being that hard on your own. Now, you want to be gentle with these, but they should have a little cap on the top that can be just pulled out like so. You don't want to scuff them up too much. Put some oil on that too. And in there's a flathead thing that you got to remove that holds this needle in place. And there we go. There we go, so that came out along with the needle. And then so, there's a dirty old needle. What I did then was get a little washer. Now, Honda, I believe you can buy, like, maybe not from Honda, but you can buy proper washers for this purpose to put underneath the needle that actually fit. I didn't have any washers tiny enough because I don't know if you can see that, but there's sort of a step in there. So if you put a washer that's too big, it'll hold the needle up way higher than it should. You need something about as skinny as the top of that needle. So I had these little black ones. Put it underneath the needle, put it back in, and then there you go. It's up higher, and that'll make it run a little richer as you come onto the throttle a bit, and hopefully get rid of any flat spots or hesitation. Now, with that washer under there, you won't be able to tighten this down as much as you did before. So in order for it not to back out, you can use epoxy or something. What I used was just some blue Loctite on the threads. You know, put that on the threads, put it back together. Kind of the way I would do it, because you don't want this needle to be like tight. You want it to be, you know, able to move and kind of rattle around like it did before. So usually I just sort of tighten it until it is too tight, which that is, and I just back it out a bit until it feels nice and loose. There we go. And then I think Loctite only takes 20 minutes to like set. I mean, another 24 hours I think to fully cure, but hopefully, yeah, 20 minutes would be all right to try it out. So then, yeah, pop your thing back in and kind of, you gotta be careful you're springing this line up nicely. And then put it back together and you're good to go. I don't know if that will go together because it's so dirty and now it's a bit scuffed up from my reefing on it, but yeah, there we go. But yeah, so I don't know. I haven't really had a chance to ride it with that setup much. I just kind of revved it a bit and it seemed all right, but we'll see how it goes once it's nice enough to actually ride.